My son sent me a message telling me that I did not need to attend his son's graduation party. His wife's family would be there for the main celebration. They really did not want any extra strangers. They did not want things to become awkward. It seems I have become an outsider. I am no longer part of this family. Something else matters more than the love I have for my grandson. Or more precisely, he no longer sees me as his father or as his child's grandfather. I know his intention is not simply about a party. I will make everything clear so they understand that I am still very sharp. I sat in my SUV at the end of the street. On the passenger seat was the gift I prepared for Baird, a vintage Omega watch. I had planned to give it to him after his high school graduation ceremony. Then the phone on the dashboard lit up. A notification from Andrew. I read the message 5 times. Every word felt like a dull surgical blade cutting slowly into my skin. A stranger, awkward. My chest tightened. A pain I knew very well was not a heart condition. My own son said these words with his own mouth. Thousands of questions flooded my mind. Thousands of excuses I tried to make for him. But I could not hide the trembling of my hands or the tightening in my chest. I looked at the house in front of me. The roof had just been replaced with my money. I looked at the kitchen where Amelia was preparing the party. That kitchen cost me $65,000 to renovate the way she wanted. I looked at the backyard where Baird was laughing. His private school tuition is $82,000, and I have written the check every semester. A stranger. I am the man who paid for every luxury breath in their lives. Yet to them I am just an old piece of furniture that needs to be stored away so their important guests will not feel uncomfortable. I looked at the photo of my grandson Baird, printed on the invitation. He is the only reason I endured the coldness of my daughter-in-law and the weakness of my son for 10 years. But this time the line has been crossed. In medicine, when a part of the body becomes necrotic, trying to save it only spreads poison into the bloodstream. The only way to survive is to cut it off. I rolled down the window. Cold air rushed in. My heartbeat became strangely steady. It was the calm of a surgeon before a major operation. Andrew thinks he politely asked me to leave. He does not understand that he has just signed the death sentence for his parasitic lifestyle. Welcome back to Dad's Real Life Revenge. My name is Robert Caldwell. I am 68 years old. I spent 31 years of my life in operating rooms as a cardiovascular surgeon. I have held thousands of beating hearts in my hands. I have seen life and death separated by a single surgical thread. Now, I am enduring a pain deeper than the physical pain of my patients. Yet I remain strangely calm. If you can please give a like and subscribe so I can get through this pain. I did not drive home immediately. I pulled over to the side of the road and looked at the clock. Exactly 16 minutes of silence. 16 minutes to separate the emotions of a father from the logic of a man who has spent his entire life making life and death decisions. In an operating room, when a blood vessel becomes blocked, you do not sit there hoping. You cut it out or reroute it. Sentiment has no place in surgery, and after that message it no longer has a place in my wallet either. For many years I played the role of a generous father. I watered the tree named Andrew far too much. I believed that providing money would give him an easier life than the one I had in the past. But I was wrong. I had unintentionally created an ungrateful monster. He and his wife Amelia treat my money as something they are entitled to. They accepted $65,000 to renovate their kitchen, yet they could not offer me a seat at their dining table. They accepted tuition payments for Baird, yet they see me as a burden that embarrasses them in front of their in-laws. I sat in the car and took a deep breath. The scent of the leather seats mixed with the faint trace of Martha's old perfume, my late wife. If Martha were still alive, how heartbroken would she be to see her only son treating his father this way? At that moment I truly realized something. People who are forced to live alone always carry a heavier discomfort than those whose lives remain balanced, those who still have both husband and wife by their side. But I did not allow myself to drown in that pain for long. Pain is a kind of toxin. It clouds judgment. I needed a cold mind. I needed absolute precision. Andrew believes I am just a retired old man who signs checks. He forgot that long before I became a father I was a specialist who handled the most critical cases. I know how to find the weak point in a system and shut it down with a single precise cut. The phone in my hand is no longer a communication device. It is a scalpel, and Andrew's family is the surgery I must perform to save my own dignity. From this moment forward, the Robert Caldwell they once knew no longer exists. The man sitting here now is a doctor preparing to remove a malignant tumor. That tumor is called exploitation. The moment that message appeared on my screen, their game did not end. But it changed, and I made a decision. I did not go home. I drove back around to Andrew's mansion while the party was at its liveliest. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Music and laughter spilled all the way out to the street. I stepped out of the car with the gift box for Baird in my hand. I did not slip in through the back door. I walked straight through the main gate with the posture of a man who truly owned the place. The moment I stepped into the yard, I saw Amelia standing in the middle of a group of elegantly dressed women. She was talking endlessly about the new kitchen and their summer travel plans. When she saw me, the smile on her face froze. Her eyes flashed with anger and fear. She quickly broke away from the group and rushed toward me. She hissed through clenched teeth. "What are you doing here?" "I told Andrew to text you already." "My family is here. You are going to embarrass us." I did not look at her. My eyes swept over the piles of bricks and scattered materials in the half-renovated bathroom area. I spoke loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "I came to give a gift to my grandson, and to inform the workers that I have terminated the contract. By the way, I also wanted to ask whether that declined credit card from earlier has been paid yet." Amelia's face turned from pale to red, and then completely drained of color. Her friends began whispering among themselves. They looked at her with growing suspicion. Andrew ran over his face, drained of blood. He tried to pull me aside. "Dad, please. Don't make this worse." I looked directly into my son's eyes. "Worse? You chose to treat me like a stranger. Then I will behave exactly like one. A stranger you happen to owe hundreds of thousands of dollars." I walked over to Baird. The boy looked at me with confusion but also affection. I handed him the Omega watch. "Congratulations on your graduation, Baird. This belongs to you. No one has the right to take it away from you. Not even your parents." Amelia tried to regain her composure and strike back. "Who do you think you are causing trouble here? This is our house." I smiled. A cold, quiet smile. "You are wrong, Amelia. This house belongs to your father-in-law. You are only living here on the generosity of that father-in-law. And that generosity officially ran out about 20 minutes ago. More precisely, 16 minutes. The energy of the party collapsed. The glittering image they had worked so hard to maintain was stripped away by just a few sentences. I turned and walked away, leaving behind a pile of broken pride and exposed lies. This was not revenge. This was an audit of human character. And the results were catastrophic. A system that has rotted from the inside should not be allowed to continue for even one more second. 16 minutes passed. The hands of the clock on the dashboard moved little by little. It was the time I used to anesthetize my own emotions. When my heartbeat had completely stabilized, I picked up my phone. The major surgery began. The first incision was Baird's education fund. I called my banking advisor. My voice was calm, as if I were requesting a laboratory report. I ordered the cancellation of every automatic payment for my grandson's tuition and living expenses. I was not abandoning Baird. I was simply changing the way this financial bloodstream was managed. I would no longer allow that flow of money to pass through Andrew and his wife. That heart valve had been leaking for far too long. Now I was going to close it. Every expense of their family, from rent to insurance, was connected to my accounts. I disconnected them all. Each cancellation notification that appeared felt like another artery being clamped shut. I could almost picture Andrew's face when the payment apps on his phone began showing error messages. But that was only the beginning. The higher level of intervention was reserved for my daughter-in-law. I called the contractor who was working on the luxurious bathroom renovation at their house. It was her dream project. She wanted a spa-like space with imported marble. I spoke to the contractor in a firm voice. "Stop all construction immediately. No exceptions. I will pay for the work completed up to today. But from this moment forward, I will not spend another dollar." The contractor hesitated, and asked about finishing the project. I answered coldly, "Leave the house exactly as it is, surrounded by piles of bricks and materials. If they want a luxury bathroom, they can find a new sponsor." Amelia wanted me to disappear from my grandson's graduation party because she was afraid of embarrassment. Then I would let her experience real embarrassment. When her guests arrived and saw the mess in the middle of the house, when the construction workers packed up their tools and walked away right in front of her friends, I felt a strange satisfaction. It was the same feeling you get when you remove a malignant tumor completely from a patient's body. There will be pain. There will be chaos. But it is necessary to save what remains. What I did was not blind revenge. It was the correction of a broken system. I had fed them too much nourishment, and they had used that nourishment to poison my self-respect. Now the financial blood flow had stopped. The parasitic cells would begin to feel the shortage. They would struggle. They would scream. But I was ready. I looked into the rearview mirror. There was no hesitation left in my eyes. I started the engine and slowly drove away. Behind me, the house was still full of music and party noise. They still did not know the power had been cut. They were still dancing on a sinking ship. In medicine, we call this shock therapy. To revive a stopped heart, sometimes you must deliver a powerful electric charge. Andrew and Baird needed to wake up, and I was the man holding the defibrillator. The surgery had only begun with its first incisions. The most dramatic parts were still ahead. I had already prepared the medical files and the financial evidence. I knew they would not sit quietly, but they had forgotten one important thing. I was the chief surgeon, and in this operating room, I was the one who held the power over life and death. Less than 2 hours after I left that street, my phone began vibrating like crazy. It was Andrew. I let it ring until the third time before answering. On the other end was not the voice of a son speaking to his father. It was the screaming of a man who had just been cut off from his oxygen supply. Andrew shouted into the phone, "What the hell did you do? The construction workers just packed up and left in the middle of the party. Everyone is looking at us like we are scammers. Amelia's credit card was declined when she tried to pay for the cake. You did all this because of one message about a party." I took a slow breath. My voice remained steady like a doctor delivering bad news. "No, Andrew. I did not do it because of the party. I did it because I am a stranger. And strangers do not owe each other obligations or affection. More importantly, I would not want you and your wife to feel uncomfortable." He went silent for a second, ignoring what I had said, then started raising his voice again like he often did. "You cannot do this. You promised to take care of Baird. You promised to help us finish the house." You, I answered firmly. "That promise was built on respect. I made that promise when I was still your father and Baird's grandfather. But when you decided that I was a stranger who was not worthy of sitting at the same table with your important guests, that promise expired. I am also a human being. I have feelings. I know happiness and sadness. At the very least, I deserve that much. And I am not an ATM machine without a password. I gave everything to you and your family. But I underestimated the greed, the selfishness of your wife, and your own weakness. Your wife does not only want money, she wants complete control over your life and mine. And even now, I can still hear her voice in the background of that call saying, 'Tell him we will call the police.' And indeed, 2 days later, I heard a knock on my door. But it was not the police. It was an investigator from Adult Protective Services. Amelia had filed a report claiming that I was showing signs of cognitive decline. She accused me of making erratic financial decisions and said I was no longer capable of managing my own assets. What do you think about my daughter-in-law's decision? Is it her way of seeking justice, or is it simply an attempt to seize the property of an old man? Leave a comment below and let me know if you share the same thoughts I have right now. I knew it was a cunning scheme. If they could prove that I was mentally unstable, they could freeze my assets. They could become my legal guardians. And at that point, everything I had built over a lifetime would fall directly into their hands. Amelia thought she had found the weakness of a man over 70 years old. She thought that my living alone in a large house after Martha passed away proved that I was lonely and vulnerable. But she underestimated this old father. I invited the investigator to sit at my desk. On it, I had already placed a perfectly prepared file. It contained the results of my routine mental health examination from just last month. Alongside it were financial reports organized clearly and transparently. I said to the investigator, "I understand your job, and I am more than willing to cooperate. It seems my daughter-in-law is very concerned about my health after I decided to stop financing their luxurious lifestyle." The investigator looked through the numbers and my medical certifications. He looked into my eyes and saw the sharpness still there. I could clearly see the confusion and even the contempt he felt toward the person who had filed the report. Amelia had tried to use a legal system she had never even bothered to read to chain the legs of a lion. And that was the moment she unknowingly opened the door to a war she had absolutely no chance of winning. My counterattack would no longer stop at cutting off financial support. It was about to go much further. The courthouse on a day of relentless rain. I stood in front of the mirror and tightened my dark blue silk tie. This was the suit I had worn on the 40th anniversary of my marriage with Martha. It reminded me why I was standing here. Not to fight over money, but to protect the honor we had built together over a lifetime. I walked into the courtroom with the posture of a chief surgeon entering a high-level medical consultation. Across from me sat Andrew and Amelia. Andrew could not look me in the eye. He kept his head lowered over a pile of papers. Amelia was different. She sat upright with a carefully crafted, confident smile. Beside them was Gerald Sims, a cheap lawyer who specialized in messy family disputes. Courtroom number 4 that day was thick with tension. It reminded me of consultations before complex heart transplant surgeries, when even the smallest mistake could lead to catastrophic consequences. I sat on the left side, my back perfectly straight, wearing the suit from my anniversary with Martha. I could feel Amelia's eyes burning into my back. She still looked elegant, but the way her hands were tightly clasped together betrayed her anxiety. Gerald Sims, my son's lawyer, began with a dramatic speech. He tried to paint the picture of a confused old father, a man who had become emotionally unstable after losing his wife and living alone. He claimed that I had promised to transfer the house to my son as an early inheritance. He insisted that my sudden decision to cut off financial support was proof of severe cognitive decline. He declared confidently before Judge Wynne, "My client wants nothing more than to protect his father's property from his father's own impulsive decisions. We have evidence of Mr. Caldwell's promise." He displayed a printed email on the large screen. In it I had clearly written, "Do not worry about the house. I will make sure it belongs to your family." Amelia believed this was the fatal point in my case. She thought I was old and had forgotten what I had written. Andrew began to sniffle softly, trying to play the role of a son betrayed by his father's broken promise. Amelia joined the performance. She pulled out a tissue and handed it to Andrew to wipe his fake tears. She spoke about how worried they had been about my mental health, about how painful it was for them to see my personality change. Andrew said nothing, but his silence was the cowardly silence of an accomplice. Judge Wynne looked directly at me. Her eyes were sharp and experienced. "Mr. Caldwell," she asked, "do you admit that you wrote these words?" I stood up. My voice rang out firm and calm. "Your Honor, I admit that I wrote those words. But that is not the whole truth." My lawyer, Catherine Park, stepped forward. She did not rush. She calmly took out a hard drive and requested permission to display the original version of the entire email chain. Catherine spoke clearly. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs deliberately removed the most important part of this message. They performed a surgical cut and paste of the text to serve their own greed." The full email appeared on the screen. After the sentence promising the house was a long paragraph that Andrew's side had deleted. I had written it very clearly. "I will make sure the house belongs to your family on one condition. You must prove independence and show the minimum level of respect. If exploitation and disrespect toward your father continue, I will immediately exercise my right to withdraw all financial support. This house is a reward for family loyalty, not a trophy for parasites." Silence filled the courtroom. It was so quiet that I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. Gerald Sims's face changed color. Andrew froze. The triumphant smile Amelia had worn moments earlier turned into a stunned open mouth. She had not expected that I had kept every original record on the hospital's private archive server. Catherine delivered the final blow. She presented bank statements proving that over the past 5 years I had paid more than $400,000 to support their luxurious lifestyle. She also submitted the report from the Adult Protective Services investigator, who had concluded that I was not only mentally sound, but had actually been the victim of emotional and financial abuse by my own family. Judge Wynne struck the gavel. The sharp sound echoed through the courtroom like a surgical blade cutting away every remaining hope Amelia had. She looked at them with open contempt. This court is not a tool for you to seize your parents' property. Fabricating evidence and abusing the elder protection system is a serious offense. I am not only dismissing this case, I am also ordering the prosecutor's office to investigate Mrs. Caldwell for fraud. Andrew covered his face. I saw his shoulders trembling. Perhaps he had finally realized that he had just lost the most valuable thing in his life. Not the house, but the only father he had left. I sat back down in my chair and felt a wave of relief spread through me. It was like the moment when the heart monitor shows that the surgery has been a complete success. I had protected Martha's legacy. I had protected my dignity. When the hearing ended, I walked out into the hallway. Daylight poured in through the windows. I felt as if I had been born again. Justice may arrive slowly, but when it comes with the support of a clear mind and sharp judgment, it sweeps away every lie. The legal battle was over, but the battle to heal the broken pieces of my family had only just begun. The legal storm ended, and with it, the artificial walls in Andrew's life began to collapse. There was no longer money flowing from me. No more rescue checks at the end of every month. His family fell into a state that medicine might call financial shock. The house Amelia once proudly displayed as a symbol of wealth became an enormous burden. The mortgage I had quietly been paying was now overdue. Creditors and construction companies began sending legal notices. They were forced to sell the half-renovated house at a humiliating price just to avoid foreclosure. I watched from a distance as they moved their belongings out of that house. There was no large moving truck, no professional movers. Only Andrew silently carrying cardboard boxes one by one into an old rented pickup truck. Amelia stood beside him. Her face no longer carried that arrogant expression. Only exhaustion and the wrinkles of constant worry remained. Silence followed for 4 months. 4 months in which I lived in the complete quiet of my old mansion. I spent my time caring for Martha's rose garden. Each diseased rose bush reminded me of how I had raised Andrew. I had watered my son too much. The instinct to overprotect had destroyed his ability to grow. One late afternoon, as the sunset painted the entire garden red, my phone vibrated. It was Andrew. His voice was hoarse. He was not shouting anymore. Instead, his words came out in broken breaths. "Dad, I'm living in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Amelia left and went back to her mother after we lost everything. I just got paid from my second delivery job today." I looked at that small amount of money and realized that for 20 years I lived like a parasite on your blood and sweat. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm truly sorry." I could hear him choking back tears on the other end of the line. My heart tightened. No parent can truly stop loving their child. But this time, I did not rush to promise another check. Compassion does not mean repeating the same mistake. I answered calmly, "Andrew, that paycheck is more valuable than every $1,000,000 I ever gave you, because it is the first proof that you are still capable of standing on your own. If you are truly ready, we will start again. Slowly, carefully. But for now, keep doing the work you are doing. Learn the things that make you stronger. Learn how to stand firmly on your own feet." I ended the call and looked up at the night sky slowly spreading above me. The most painful punishment is not poverty. It is the moment when someone realizes they traded family love for meaningless material things. Andrew had lost all his money. But perhaps for the first time in his life he was beginning to become rich in character. If you followed this story all the way to the end, please do us one small favor. Subscribe. Many people watch without doing it, and it costs you nothing. In return, when you wake up, you will always have new stories waiting for you. Stories that carry meaning and remind us what truly matters. 1 month after that phone call, Andrew stood at the gate of my house. He looked much thinner, but his eyes no longer carried the dull emptiness of a man who had lived only for comfort. He saw me kneeling on the ground, trimming the dry branches from Martha's rose bushes. I did not invite him inside right away. Instead, I handed him a pair of pruning shears. I said to him, "Do you see this, Andrew? If I do not cut away these dying branches, the entire rose bush will die from disease. Sometimes the greatest cruelty is indulgence, and the greatest kindness is firmness." We worked together in silence. The sharp clicks of the shears echoed softly in the quiet air. It was the first time in many years that we had worked side by side on something that had nothing to do with money or demands. I felt a new energy flowing between father and son. It was fragile, like a blood vessel that had just been reconnected after a major surgery. I led him to the rose bush that Martha loved the most. I spoke about my own mistake. I was wrong to believe that money could build happiness for you. I turned myself into an ATM instead of being a father. My blind protection robbed you of your strength. Andrew lowered his head. His voice was quiet but steady. "I understand now, Dad. When I earned my first paycheck to pay my rent, I finally felt like a real man. I do not want to return to the life I had before. I want to learn how to live in a way that is worthy of the Caldwell name. Money cannot replace respect. Do not build a family on the belief that the person who pays the bills is the most important one. Build it on understanding and boundaries." I looked up at the sky. The stars were beginning to appear. I believed that somewhere out there Martha was smiling. We had lost a luxurious house. We had lost the glamorous parties. But we had found each other again. A genuine connection that was no longer stained by greed. Every scar carries a story. The scar of my family is a reminder of the price of ingratitude and the power of forgiveness. If you are standing in front of a difficult decision with someone you love, remember this. Sometimes cutting off support is the most loving thing you can do. If my story helped you recognize the value of respect within a family, please share this video with someone who needs it most. Thank you for staying with me until the final moments of this journey. This is Dad's real-life revenge. I placed my hand on Andrew's shoulder. The two of us walked into the house just as the streetlights flickered on. The surgery had succeeded, and the patient was taking his first steady steps on the road to recovery. A new chapter in the life of Robert Caldwell had officially begun.